bringing back the agency. I'm still looking at myself to make something happen given the circumstances that I'm in. I'm not saying but he, but she, but they, but, but this happened, the weather happened, blah, 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 blah. Not even going there. To me, that's a waste of energy, a waste of mental energy that's only going to, create emotions that I don't necessarily want to have.
The Business Owner's Journey. I'm Nick Berry, and I've got real business owners telling their real stories, sharing their real lessons and strategies so you don't have to figure it all out on your own. Dr. Haley Perlus is an entrepreneur and a sports performance psychologist. I've been wanting to bring on a guest who could speak to the mental challenges of being a business owner and how to go about handling those things and getting better at handling them. Haley works with business owners on that very thing. And the skills that she works on with business owners and leaders and elite athletes are skills that everyone can apply every day. It's what do you do? What do the best do when things go wrong? And how do I get better at doing that? She gave some great practical advice in the interview that you can use right away. I think the 3 strengths strategy that we talk about has already become one of my favorite practices for myself. And I've already started sharing that with some other people. Since our interview, I've also finished her book, Personal Podium. It's full of strategy. The entire thing is strategies just like that to help you get your mind right and step up to the challenge, whatever that challenge may be. I'm a big fan of Haley and what she preaches, and I think you will be too. Enjoy the episode.
My story starts when I was 12 years old. I was an alpine ski racer growing up, and a really good one. When I was 12, I peaked, and I was asked. To go.
Little league at 12.
So when I was 12 years old, I was asked to go and compete in what would be considered the world championships for my age group. And long story short, my coach comes up to me just before I'm about to go and compete. And he pulls out $100 bill and he places it in front of my face. And he tells me that he's bet on me to win this world championship. And then he tells me that he lost betting on a different athlete the week before, a race that I was not in, and that he's not prepared to lose today. And then he, points in the direction of the starting gate because it's my turn to go. And he smiles and he tells me to go have fun. And so, now I can tell you what was going on mentally from a mental toughness perspective. But obviously at 12 years old, I didn't. But today I can tell you that in that moment, I was at an emotional and a mental fork in the road. And this is something that you and I and everyone, viewing this, experiences each and every day. So my coach puts pressure on me. So on one hand, I could feel anger, frustration, worry, fear. How could he do that? What if he's wrong? What if I make a mistake? On the other hand, I could think and then feel passionate, confident, hopeful, excited. If my coach believes in me so much that he has high expectations, doesn't that mean I'm doing something right? And that is something that you and I are in each and every day. But back then at 12 years old, I didn't really, I can't tell you that I stood there and acknowledged this mental and emotional fork in the road and processed it. But I so clearly remember thinking, wow, if he's putting that much pressure on me, he must really believe in me. And if he really believes in me, why shouldn't I believe in myself? And then what happens? Then you start thinking about, I've won every race so far this season. I know this course. I'm strong. I slept well. And all the reasons why I can instead of all the reasons why I can't. So I went down that race course and I did win, which was great. My coach congratulated me, kept all the money for himself. But he then said to me something that completely created my career. He said, it's amazing what your performance can be when you get your head straight. And then he brought a sports psychologist to come and speak to my team. And I just was so interested in this. I went home at 12 and I told my parents that I wanted to be a sports psych gal when I grew up. And I stayed the course.
That's awesome. So, and I'm imagining like your coach knew what he was doing, right? Like,
well, I'm not going to tell every coach to start betting on their athletes, and I'm not going to tell every leader to start betting on their employees in that extreme. But I know that my coach, to this day, he is one of my top 3 coaches that I've ever had, because I believe he knew what made me tick. And I do thrive under pressure. You know, I'm sure we'll get into some of these things, but sometimes I consider myself to be a procrastinator. Because if someone's if someone asks me for a keynote 30 days in advance, the answer is going to be no, because I just don't have the proper focus, the energy, the motivation. But, the last week leading up to it, I start feeling that pressure. And for me, initially, it's a good motivator. I don't want to live there forever because that's bad, but it's a good igniter. And I think my coach knew that about me. And so he took that risk.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so when you started the story, I and now having heard it, I can picture this like alternate universe where like in parallel, it goes a different direction. And it's more of like the Molly Bloom story. Like this 12-year-old sees $100 and is like, man, I'm going to get skiing. There's something else out there for me.
I want more money. Yeah. Where's the money? let me create ways, well, we know what happened with the Molly Bloom story, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad you stayed your course.
Me too. Well, I kind of stayed my course.
Yeah. What do you mean?
I did get my PhD in sports psychology, and I do still work with athletes. But I always thought that I would only work with athletes. Marry a quarterback, and have that life. But I didn't just work with athletes. I think one of the reasons, even though I was goal oriented, I also had an open mind, and other opportunities came my way. So now I get to work in the sport industry, the health and fitness industry, as you and I know, and then also in the corporate world. I now travel and give. I was just working with some in the finance industry, working with some traders on mental toughness as well. So I stayed the course, but then also so much more, which is wonderful.
So I think that's great. Like tie those groups together that you just mentioned. You mentioned the athletes, you mentioned fitness, and then you mentioned like in the corporate world. Yeah. What is this cross section, the problem set that they all have that you work with on? What are the commonalities?
Sure. So in my business, I start from the neck up, obviously. So now, even though I know about nutrition and fitness, my area of expertise is the mind. And so every thought that we have influences an emotion. And if we go back to my story, I was either, when my coach bet on me, because of the story I told myself, I was either going to feel anxious or I was going to feel excited. And so the thoughts impact our emotions. Our emotions then influence our body and our performance. So I work with anyone in any industry, sport, fitness, wellness, business, to get, just like my coach told me, to get my head straight, to get all of our heads straight so that we can then, get our minds right, which then helps our emotions facilitate peak performance.
So I read, you can debunk this for me. I think I read somewhere one time that like physiologically, the butterflies in your stomach, anxiety or excitement, it's the same exact thing. But what you tell yourself up here is more what determines how you feel about it.
Yeah. So in sport, a common tool with the butterflies in your stomach is, the visualization of having butterflies in our stomach is all these butterflies just swarming around, out of control. We no longer have control. That's anxiety, no longer feeling like you have control. You no longer have the confidence and perceived control. If we move and use a visualization or an imagery technique where we take back control of those butterflies, and athletes use this all the time, they place those butterflies in their mind's eye in an inverted V, like birds flying above us. Well, birds fly above us in an inverted V because it's fast and it's efficient. So if we can, in our mind's eye imagery, put our butterflies in an inverted V, now they're there to help us perform. We just now regained perceived confidence and perceived control. And we, from a physiological standpoint, it all relatively stays the same. It's energy, but emotionally, mentally, it moves away from anxiety and more into like arousal, which is just energy ready to be exerted and help us instead of hurt us.
Yeah. Okay. So, for like the business owner, can you give me some ideas, just some examples? I'm not naming names or anything like that, but like, what are just the very relatable, common, typical problems that people are faced, and that you can take that imagery and apply it, and it helps them. You can basically go out the next day, maybe even, and feel like you have more of a sense of control.
Absolutely. So one of the ways is, even though I just said athletes do this, we can all do this because we all experience butterflies in the stomach. But if we bring it down to a very like concrete, tangible example, maybe you're having an upcoming meeting with a new investor or a new person that you want to make a deal with, or you're just presenting to your board, or you just have a presentation that you're giving where you're feeling anxiety, meaning I've got all that energy, but it's coupled with doubt, because anxiety means it's coupled with some type of doubt. Arousal and energy, can still be brought with confidence. And in that moment, what I do with anybody I'm working with, again, in any industry, I always like to focus on some fundamental strengths that we all have. And it's really good if you just nail it down to 3 things. What are my fundamental strengths? So if I'm just going to use myself, my fundamental strengths are I'm bright. So it's like what the sun gives the earth is I know I can bring that energy to a group and to my surroundings, my environment. I'm bright. I'm also full heart. Everything I do comes from heart. And when people work with me, they know the most common thing that people say about me is that I care. So I'm come with full heart. And then the third strength that I have fundamentally is I'm a strength finder. I'm going to look and I'm going to listen and I'm going to find your strengths and help you focus on your strengths. So if I ever get really anxious, it's a new group that I'm speaking to, or I want to land this deal, or I want to get this investor, or I'm just anxious. I've lost a little bit of confidence, and I'm now, my anxiety, my energy is coupled with doubt. I will go back to my top 3 fundamentals: bright, full heart, strength finder. And I will choose one of those strengths to bring with me. So all of us, no matter what you're doing, we all have strengths. Now, narrow it down to 3 so it's easy to choose from. And as soon as we find ourselves anxious, look at your top 3 strengths and ask yourself, which one can I bring with me right now to this upcoming stressor, to this upcoming moment of anxiety? And what we'll find is that your anxiety kind of shifts a little bit away from that area and moves more towards an arousal, high energy. And now it's coupled with confidence and control.
Yeah, that's incredible. I've never heard that. And, I can just imagine, because in those situations, it's just like with anything where if you don't have a method, sometimes it goes right. But a lot of times it doesn't. And you're like basically left hoping that next time it'll go right, because you don't really know how to replicate it going the way that you want to. But having some sort of method, other than like deep breaths, count to 10, deep breaths, count to 10.
Which can work. I mean, yes, if we have a calm body, obviously that affects our mind. But can you imagine if everyone was able to? I was working with a woman a few weeks ago, and she's trying to bring this huge project into her company, and she has to present to people above her. And she's nervous, and she doesn't know that she's going to get the buy-in. But I asked her what is one of her strengths in presenting. And she talked about her humor. Like she can make a room laugh. That is the first thing I want you to focus on when you go into that boardroom or go into that meeting. You bring your best, you draw that attention, and then the energy is reciprocated. And then you can go ahead and deliver that content. So you just, she's walking into that room with a strength. This is what we learned from professional athletes. Athletes don't, in high pressure situations, the ones that do best, they're going out on that field, jumping in the water, climbing that mountain, armed and ready to show off. And I say that in a good way, show off their strengths. They want to highlight their strengths. And so why aren't we doing the same thing? And again, from a mental perspective, it allows us to feel more confident, more in control. And then once we find that we're being successful, we're functioning, then the whole situation just appears to be easier in my perspective.
Yeah, really. I mean, I can imagine this is, I'm going to be better tomorrow for having this conversation.
Oh, good.
So how much different is an athlete? Like, I've been really fortunate my entire life. I'm one of the people, I think that it's more rare than common, where I've had more good coaches than bad. You know, I've been taught about mental toughness in some way, shape, or form for a really long time. So, at the very least, I get resilience. But I'm sure, you know, there's more to it than that. But that's kind of the lens that I apply to all of it. What's the difference between an athlete in the head game and a business owner?
I don't know that there's a big difference between the head game, but there is one very big difference in the way we can develop it and train it. Athletes train 90. I say that, but don't quote me on the actual number because it's give or take the sport. But athletes train much more than they compete, right? Athletes are training like 90% of the time and competing 10% of the time. Again, that varies from sport to sport. In the business world, we don't get to train. We're always out there performing. I mean, maybe if you're listening to, you know, your podcast, and like I said, I just came back from New York giving, you know, a 90-minute training session. So there's a little bit of training, but 90% of the time we're out there performing. We're out there competing all the time. So it matters. It counts. In sports, there's a lot more ability to try, you know, and see if it works, see if it doesn't work. You know, and in mental toughness, there's so many tools and techniques. What I love about psychology of performance is that it's a science, but there's also an art to it. And the science, you know, are all this type of self-talk works, this type of imagery works. And we know that obviously through research. But then there's an art to it. We have to figure out how to make it work for us. And athletes have a lot of time to train and to work it out. In business, we're going to work it out, but we're working it out while we're performing, while we're competing for business. So that's a very big difference in just the space that we have to figure these things out. But I do think that the core is the same, which is why I love transition, which is why I can apply it to sport, fitness, even relationships, even though it's not typically what I do. And then business, you know, it's from that to me is simple. You know, our mind impacts our emotions, which alter our body, which influences our behavior. That is simple, but just our lives as an athlete versus a business person is different.
Yeah. To me, it's easier to define the mental challenge on the side of sport than it used to be, at least in business. Now I've talked about it in business so many times, like I probably can kind of put it in a box, but it's like, you know, when in sport, I'm thinking about, like the pressure, game situation, you know, those are the elements. In business is more like you're dealing with uncertainty. Like the challenges are the uncertainty, the constantly changing landscape, the complexity of it. And that's where you have to call on like the mental toughness, the resilience. Like I use high agency is a word that I use a lot. Like I think is behind mental toughness. How do you, if you can put the challengers into a box like that, how do you describe each one for like sport and for business?
I love the word I love the word agency too. Taking responsibility, knowing that you have choice. And I think today we're kind of shying away from that. It's almost like we don't want agency, but it's the only way that we gain confidence. It's a good word. Responsibility is a good word. I love the word pride, the acronym for pride, personal responsibility in delivering excellence. And it's something that I didn't come up with it, but I use it. And
you're getting credit here.
Well, thank you. But that's agency, you know, like, taking responsibility. And, you know, the way I listen to you compare business and sport, I mean, you're definitely right. If you're a baseball player, you know, the field is the field and, you know, the rules are the rules. There's not a whole lot of change. So I do understand that. In business, I mean, we have to there is a lot of uncertainty where in sports, in the actual sporting arena, we know there are lanes. We know there are, periods, that we know that there are refs, like all that. However, there are athletes, even though they know that their sport has certain factors, they have life outside of sport. Things happen all the time, and they still need to be able to walk onto their, sporting arena. Even though all the uncertainty outside happened, they still need to be able to walk on into their sporting arena ready to play. And I think that's the same with business too, in some sense as well. You gotta get your head in the game, whether it's sport and business. But I do buy that, where, for some people, and depending on the business, there's more uncertainty, where in sport there is, you know what you're walking into.
I think the uncertainty is there. It just takes a different form. There's always, like, everybody has their stuff, right? So we can't just assume that, like, somebody's game is easier because it's different. Everybody's got their stuff. But
it's a good quote, Nick. That should be everyone's got their stuff. I like it. Talk about simplifying it.
Yeah, they do.
And
right?
sometimes the stuff just simply sucks.
Yeah. Yep. We've all got our shit that, like, and you never know what somebody's been through that day or that week or that month or what's on their mind. So, like, yeah, that's kind of my self-talk for making sure that I'm giving the benefit of the doubt more as often as possible, because you just never know, right? The whole uncertainty thing that reminds me of, I'm sure Annie Duke, right? It's the Thinking in Bets. Have you read that, or do you know about Annie Duke? Well, it's an awesome book. Annie Duke is
Bets. Okay.
Mm-hmm. And she wrote this book. She's a former professional poker player, and she's sharp like a professional, like a world champion poker player. Like, she's won the World Series of Poker a few times, I think. But she's intelligent the way that you would expect. And she just talks about, like, you just don't get that many certainties in decision making. And so you're trying to set yourself up to make better decisions as often as possible. And that's what poker's about. And you're having to make these decisions with less than complete information 100% of the time. And she used this comparison. She was like, on a chessboard, every move is right there. Now, it's a lot, but every possibility is right there in front of you. When you're playing poker, that's not the case, because you only know these cards and maybe the few that are visible on the table. So, like, there are two very different levels of, like, certainty that, like, within the boundaries. And, that's the thing, working with business owners and talking to business owners for so long, that it's just really hard for people to want to get in the arena and stay in the arena and play when, like, you don't know nearly as much as you would like to know. You're never going to have all the information. Like, you're going to live and die based on doing the best you can with what you've got 100% of the time. I just run into people all the time who are like, you ask them a question like, well, I don't know. That's a tough question. I can't answer that because I don't. If all the information was available, I wouldn't have asked you. Like, I would know the answer. Right. I think that's some of that wiring that you have to have that's a little bit different.
Yeah. To me, that separates the people who are successful and the people who are not successful. The people who are not successful are either waiting for the perfect moment to where they know everything and they can see everything, and then they never get anything done, right? It's like the greatest excuse for not doing anything. We're always thinking about the reasons why we're not ready, all the reasons why we need to hold off, instead of just giving yourself some grace. You don't know everything, but don't let yourself off the hook and do nothing. Mm-hmm. And that's a really big distinction. And go with what you do know and understand that you don't know everything. But if you're just going to hang out until the time is right that you feel like, okay, now I know enough. And the only way we learn is by doing too. So you want to learn some more, start doing, and then you'll learn some more. You'll learn what works. You'll learn what you learn what doesn't. I mean, it goes back to Edison, right? He didn't learn 1,000 ways. He didn't fail 1,000 ways. He learned 1,000 ways not to invent the light bulb. And, Tim Ferriss, actually, I'll never forget listening to Tim Ferriss, when he wrote his, it was the 4-Hour Work Week. And then he wrote another one, the 4-Hour Chef. And I think the second one was not as nearly as successful as the first, or I know he's got more than just 2 books, but I remember someone asked him, like, are you upset at your certain, they called it a failure. Are you upset at that? And he's like, no, I made a choice with the information I had at that time. I'm paraphrasing. He's like, I had the knowledge that I had at that time. Obviously years later, I could go back and maybe I would redo it, but I didn't have that knowledge. So I did what I felt was the best decision in that moment. And look at him now. I mean, so we all have to make decisions and take action. And it's the person that's, again, it's that doubt. It's that person that's waiting for the best, perfect time. They're the ones that are sitting back and watching everyone be successful.
Mm-hmm.
So,
or they're scared to put themselves out there, and for fear of it being a wrong answer or a wrong move.
Don't be, I hope I'm not being too rude here. Don't be stupid. And, if you don't do your due diligence, learn as much as you can, watch from others, and then see how you can, take that information and then give it a go. Don't just, jump in the deep end without knowing how to swim at all. But once you start developing skills, the only way to hone in on your skills is to start doing. And it's this idea that it has to be perfect, or it's this idea that failure this is actually a really important lesson, again, that we can learn from sports. You hear athletes all the time saying that losing isn't an option, right? Losing is not an option. And I even hear business people say losing is not an option. It is an option. It does happen. In order for one person to win, somebody else and probably many others has to lose. So it is an option. I understand what they're saying. They don't want to let their mind go there. They want to keep their mind on the path of success and armed with confidence. But in my opinion, it's actually even better to acknowledge the fact that I might fail here, acknowledge the fact that I might lose, accept it. And then I don't have to even think about it. Then I can move on to doing the best that I can to get the best result that I possibly can. And to me, that's the better approach, because that fear can be paralyzing. And it's an irrational story. Like I just recently saw this thing. It was like steps, just steps towards success. And every step was failure, 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 success.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it probably just comes back to, each individual kind of knowing which way, which internal dialogue or the narrative suits them best for them to be able to perform the best. I would assume that at a professional level, if they're saying that, like, they're probably not, hopefully they're beyond being paralyzed by like a limited, or fixed mindset, right? They're not having to, they're just trying to curate the imagery, the visualization that they're doing in their mind. Like, it's not an option because I'm not thinking about that. I'm only going to think about the way that I'm going to like manifest these actions or whatever.
Yes. However, in my consulting practice, when I work with individuals, it's not about feeling safe all the time. In fact, you want to get comfortable feeling uncomfortable. Now, I'm not a big believer in like lofty goals. I mean, I am. If you're a big dreamer, dream big. But I'm not, if you come to me, I'm not going to force you to dream. If you're already dreaming, great, no big deal. But I just want you to, if this is your current level of ability, let's challenge yourself just above here. So you're not going to feel safe, right? You're not going to feel safe, just a little bit above. But to me, that's where the growth happens. I mean, talk about growth mindset. That's where the growth happens. And then you actually realize that even though you were feeling unsafe, even if you fall, you're okay. You talk about resilience. You know what resilience is? Recovering. And you can only recover if you failed. And that's what resilience is. It's you fall down. The person who gets back up the best way, is often the winner in the end. So it's this changing mindset of, I want to be safe. I don't know if that's what I want to be. I don't know that that's what I want to be. When I go out there, I want to feel a little unsafe. I'm not going to challenge myself up here, because to me that's stupid. But I'm going to challenge myself just here. And then I learn that if I fall, I'm not falling too hard, and I'm going to learn something along the way. And most importantly, I'm going to be okay. Everyone is going to be okay. Yep. And, so I feel sometimes we're not making decisions that fears just because we have this motivation to be safe. And I like to change that story for people.
Yeah, I love that. Is that so? I'm started in the book. I'm just maybe 25, 30 pages in, but I'm
impressed. That's good.
Yeah. And so I don't know everything that's in there. How is this all covered in the book?
Not everything. I mean, the whole fear piece about, fear, like failure happens. So I do cover, there's actually a chapter in it about wanting success more than you fear anything else. And I really pride myself on technique and tactics. That's one thing that I learned in sport. And that's one thing that I really hope to bring to business. Technique and tactics, not just this abstract concept that you want success more than you feel failure. For example, it's really, how can I move away from, the focus, the priority of being afraid to fail and making wanting success being the priority. So yeah, that is covered in the book, Personal Podium.
So this is now kind of just being like selfish, ask a couple questions that I just have. I'm so intrigued by this stuff that's gone on with the PGA. And, I know I'd seen something from you a few years ago along these lines, and I just filed it away. You did a little piece of content about how Rory McIlroy is going to reset or recover something after what might be perceived as a failure. I don't remember the exact story, but that was, what I'm talking about. And I'd filed it away. Well, then when, the morning that Scottie Scheffler got arrested, and it's probably 7:30 in the morning, I thought of you, and I almost reached out to you. And then I thought, it's probably like 5:30 where she's at. So I'm going to leave her alone this morning. But
I appreciate that.
We, as human beings, tend to fall into this mode of woe is me, or being a victim, or whining about our obstacles, or, well, I can't work today, or I can't give you my all today because my daughter, who's 2, woke up during the night and I didn't get my full 7.5 hours last night, Haley. I was awake for 2 extra hours. So I'm going to be cranky today.
Suck it up, Nick, is what I'm going to say.
There you go. So I'm like, man, this dude, Scottie Scheffler, I'm going to say I'm 99.9% sure that 3 minutes before he got arrested, he was thinking something like very innocent, something along the lines of, man, wonder what's going on here. He was not thinking about spending the next few hours in jail, about his face being all over, like everything, everywhere, in orange jumpsuits and all that shit. Like, his day turned like that. And then 3 or 4 hours later, he's back at it's the PGA championship, right? In Louisville, and shoots like a hell of a round, stays in contention. So the dude, before this happened, all eyes were already on him. He's, arguably the most popular, right? And also has this like just absolutely pure reputation, right? Then he gets arrested. I'm guessing it's the first time he's ever had to run in with the law. And then he how does he go through all that, show back up and play the way that he played? Like, how did he get his head game right going through all that? I'm just so intrigued. I want to know, like, what did he get coached on to prepare him to be able to like right the ship?
I don't know exactly how the coaching that he's had, but I do know whether he's had formal training in mindset and mental toughness, or just experience playing as long as he has in his just life experiences. he demonstrated the discipline of 100% focus on the only thing that's relevant in the moment. And this is what, it's interesting. You open up a sports psychology book or a psychology performance book, and usually it starts with motivation. A lot of these books will start with motivation as being the primary performance psychology tool. I believe it's actually concentration. And this is what I believe Scottie had. He has the discipline to, in the moment, understand what's relevant and not relevant. And so he went through, it was however long hours. I think he was, I think he was in I don't even know what the right word was, arrested for like 45 minutes to an hour or something. I think he was held up before he got released. But as soon as he gets released and he's on his way back to compete, the only thing that's relevant is how much time he now has to warm up. When is he teeing off? Because I know things got delayed and pushed back, but when is he teeing off? And then what can he do with whatever time he has left to warm up? Because it wasn't the normal 3-4 hours that it usually takes. So what can he do within that hour? And then when he steps onto that first tee, the only thing that matters is that first tee. And then after, that first drive, and then it's about okay, what iron am I going to pick up, and where am I going to hit next? And the only thing that is relevant in that moment is now him in that in that current shot. So he has the discipline to understand that what was relevant a few hours ago when he got arrested is no longer relevant in the moment. Now, he had to contact his lawyers, and he still has to go through all of the legal, and he'll have to follow through on all of that. So it will become relevant again. But for that round of golf, not relevant. And he has the mental discipline, concentration. It's a skill of concentration. And how do we develop it? It's like any muscle. You go to the gym, you want to strengthen your biceps, you got to do the reps, you got to do the sets, you got to do the proper training. I don't know exactly what training he's done. I know what I do with my athletes, but he's done some type of training to be able to literally tune out, press mute on all of the irrelevant stuff, because he's got stuff, like you said. And in the moment, it's just about that golf swing. And same thing with Rory McIlroy. Rory, the situation that you brought up, what I did a mental toughness moment on, a few years back, was that the media created this whole story and started listing all of his stats and all of these numbers. And is he going to win? Is he not going to win? For him, that can't be relevant at all. He was talking about how he was so close again. And so he needed to focus on the fact that he's so close, that he's almost there, period. And just focus on that. And it's one of the disciplines he has. And if I can just jump in, I know you're a golf fan. However, Roger Federer, tennis, great, even though he's now retired, tennis great, just addressed, I believe it was Dartmouth University, with a commencement address. And he gave some lessons. And one of the lessons he talks about, and I believe I'm quoting him right when he says, it's just a point. So he obviously used metaphors for tennis to teach us all. And he said, it's just a point. And what does he mean? In the moment, the point that he's playing is the only thing that matters. Nothing else in the world matters. And as soon as that point has been played, win or lose, success or failure, it no longer matters. It was just a point. And now the only thing that matters is the current point. And it's a concentration skill. And we have to take that with us, because often we take what just happened. Think about all the golfers out there, golfers, they have one bad shot and they just take it with them for the rest of the game. It's the worst thing that we can do. We have to have the discipline of understanding it's no longer relevant. It doesn't matter anymore. What matters right now? And we can take that into every single moment in business.
Yeah. I mean, so being a baseball player growing up, it was like taking your bat into the field. And sometimes if we really needed to have our eyes open, the coach would be like, here, go stand out there, take your glove, take this bat with you, hang on to it, hold on to it like you're doing up here, and let me hit you a few ground balls and see what you can do with them. Like, you see the problem here, right? And so, that all clicks And then there's the, okay, but, 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 but that referee, but this person cut me off, but my daughter woke up this morning. Like, there has to be some, if there's not a coach present, even if there is, there has to be some self accountability for saying like, not good enough, Nick. It does not matter. I can get to the end of this round of golf or the end of this, conversation, the end of this day. And it's going to have gone a certain way, and I'm going to feel a certain way about it. I can either look back and be like, well, it wasn't perfect. However, I stayed with it. I persevered. I was resilient. I did whatever I needed to do to do the best that I was able to do. Or if I want to do the excuse game, I can say, well, it wasn't that good, but I've got an excuse for that. And if that's your thing, like, all right. I think when people, if you look at it like that, it makes it a much easier decision, right? You can start to decide, well, I want to be this way. I can at least start trying to be intentional about strengthening that muscle that you described.
No matter what just happened in the past, no matter how many hours you lacked sleep, no matter if you just got arrested, no matter, you said so many things there. I'd love to unpack a few things. The word but. I want to do this, but I'd like to do this, but I mean, we all have some big buts and we cannot lie, right? So, that but word is letting us off the hook. And as I said before, we do need to give ourselves grace. Things do happen, but we cannot let ourselves off the hook. And so I like to replace the but with the truth is. The truth is my daughter was up for 2 hours. The truth is I didn't get my 7.5 hours sleep. The truth is this is what I can bring to the table today. So now it's again that agency that I'm in complete agreement with you. It's bringing back the agency. I'm still looking at myself to make something happen given the circumstances that I'm in. I'm not saying but he, but she, but they, but this happened, the weather happened, blah, 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 blah. Not even going there. To me, that's a waste of energy, a waste of mental energy that's only going to, create emotions that I don't necessarily want to have for performance. Yeah. So that's one thing. And then the other, if I could just jump on that, how do we, so the truth is that I'm still here to deliver a 45-minute presentation. I'm still here and hosting this podcast. It doesn't really matter what happened. What's relevant now is that you still have to host. You still have to, put your business hat on. No longer are you dad for this moment. Right now, you're business owner. And if you can't figure out, if you're getting lost, how am I going to do this? Because you're emotionally overwhelmed with your circumstances, bring it back to your fundamental strengths. In sports, professional athletes say it always comes back to the fundamentals. Well, you have fundamental strengths as a business person. Look at your 3. Again, for me, it's right, full heart, strength finder. And I can say it like that because I've rehearsed it so quickly and used it. Which one am I going to use in this moment? And basically what you're doing is helping yourself to press mute on everything and getting really, your head is going to be right where your feet are. You're going to be in the moment armed with your strengths. And again, it may not be perfect. It probably won't. Give yourself some grace. Do not let yourself off the hook.
I've got some work to do, Haley.
Well, we all do. And this is why I love this so much, because I get to learn it every day, right? I get to, as I'm talking to you, as I just ended that, I was like, okay, wait a second. Did I give myself grace this morning, or am I I evaluate my own performance, which is awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man. And there's so much to it, but it's, I really like being able to distill it down like you've done to there are just a few things that if you can start to arm yourself with these things, then you can start to get control, or have more of a sense of control over things and not be on your heels all the time with, whatever the challenges are in front of you.
Control and confidence. And you need concentration, all the C words. but control and confidence happens with proper concentration. And I think that's, when you talk about the pro athletes, Scottie, Rory, I brought in Roger Federer. I mean, I think they bring confidence and control, and they do that by being able to concentrate on what's relevant for them in the moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's a method to it, to the madness, right? Oh yeah. And so, I guess on a little bit bigger scale, we talked about my example is Scottie Scheffler getting arrested and, how does he recover that day? But so now just a few weeks ago, Rory McIlroy had a rough ending to the US Open. It's going to be a few weeks. Like, what does the self-talk and the practice that he's going through? What does it look like over a bigger, longer time period?
So if I were Rory McIlroy's performance coach, which I am not, but I would love to be, although I think
you should be.
Well, I'm sure he's got a great team around him, but here, I'll say but in a good sense, but here I am. A couple of things. I'm okay with being emotional. I really, truly am. I think we're all human, and, a little bit of upset, whether it's sadness, defeat, anger, frustration, those are all normal emotions, and we need proper space. And the more you get used to this, the quicker it can happen. So the more you do it, the quicker it can happen. So you need to process those emotions. You need to vent them, and often use them to motivate. And then you've got to quickly move on. And you've got to move on again. It's moving on to what's now. And it's, and he even talked. I mean, I know he took off that day, and he'll have to deal with those consequences from the media perspective because he didn't give any interviews. He just kind of left. But he then submitted a reporter, or he did have a statement afterwards. And he shared there was some stuff that he's gonna, I think the word was rue, but there's some stuff that he's got to move through. However, this is what went right. And I think any performer needs to focus on, after they vent the negative emotions or the unpleasant emotions, and they're ready to go another day, they're ready to go again. What did I do right? What can I do better? Those are the two questions. What did I do right? What can I do better? And every day in training, you want to focus on both. Continue to work on what you're doing right so that it's even more habitual, and focus on what you can do better. So then that too becomes more of increase the probability of that. And what's in the past is in the past. Again, it's no longer relevant. We've already evaluated it. What did I do right? What can I do better? So we've got that information. The past is in the past. Now it's about using that in the current situation. And he still got it. He knows he still has it. And so as long as you vent those unpleasant emotions and the disappointment, you give yourself time and space to vent that. And then you move forward to doing better another day.
On to the next thing.
But it's not so simple. A lot of people think, okay, roll up your sleeves, get to work. I really believe, and again, I'm not condoning him for just leaving. I would have liked for him to be resilient and in the moment. I mean, he's not just playing for himself anymore. It is his own business. So I do believe that he was capable of saying something in the moment, but doesn't matter. After you do that, let yourself vent the emotions in your private space, because it's no one else's business but your own. Vent the hardship, process the disappointment, and then, let's move on with stronger and better.
Yeah. I'm so intrigued by it, the mental game of all of it, not just sport.
Yeah. Things need to be simple, in my opinion. From the, mental, and it's interesting, if I can just dive in, we call it mental toughness. So what I just explained, it's not about always being tough. Mental toughness is allowing yourself to be sad, upset, and then recovering from that. That's the mental toughness piece. And then once you do that, then the move forward can be simple. I know the skills I have. I need to continue to hone in on those. And I know what I need to improve upon. I need to continue to do that. Simple.
Yeah. And I mean, in fairness, like, the examples we're talking about, these guys with Rory or Scheffler or Federer, or any of the professional athletes, the microscope they're under, like, we keep using kind of the comparison of like my day and my daughter waking up and our conversation. Well, there's no media waiting for me outside my door. Like I get to worry about Nick getting his head right. I don't have to worry about the optics that come along with it. It would probably be even easier for Rory to go out and get his mind right for the next shot, the next round, the next tournament. If he wasn't having to like deal with that element. But that is part of their job.
It's part of their job. I mean, and in business, we've got the Elon Musk. I mean, we've got people who are just as much in the, in the public eye as a professional athlete, and it's their job. And with success comes consequences. And I don't even know that every athlete would look at that as consequences, like negative consequences. But with any success comes more attention. And that's certainly not just in sport, that's in business too. And so the more we succeed, the more we'll have to deal with additional factors. But the principles are the principles. You gotta press mute and you gotta get to work.
Yep. Agreed. I mean, you saw firsthand the grace that I handled Riverside with when we got started.
You were great. You were very resilient. Your word.
Right. As far as you, for your business, what do you go? Who do you follow? Where are you absorbing the lessons that you're learning from?
I'm going to give you more of a philosophy, because I think it's a good learning lesson. So I'm choosy. I'm selective. The podcasts that I listen to, the people that I learn from, the books that I read, are actually not broad in the authors and the hosts. I'm actually quite narrow. I've chosen the formulas, or I've chosen the people that I trust. I've chosen the things that I believe in, and then I dive deep into that. So an easy way to look at this would be nutrition. There are so many different concepts and theories and, principles about nutrition. I did my due diligence. I looked around. I found a nutrition program that I believe in, and I don't look outside of that. I dive deep. I commit. I trust. And for me, I feel like that's better. Because if I look around at all these different, and I'm going to learn about this type of nutrition and that type of nutrition and that type of nutrition, I will get so confused. I won't do anything. So who I learn from is probably, probably can count them on my hand. But then I dive deep, and they don't know who I am. They're truly my mentors. Instead of looking all around, or I'll look at that and I'll look at that and I'll learn from that and I'll learn from that. To me, that doesn't serve me. And I actually like to bring that as a lesson to all of us. For just my humble opinion, I just like to be selective and really dive deep. And to be completely honest, my greatest influence is my father. When I have a question, he's probably the first one that I go to. And I've watched him. He's started his own business, and I've watched him and looked at his lessons, and I'll follow them. I don't really need to look far and wide. Just find the person you trust, find the concept you trust, and go for it, because a choice and commitment to me is far better. We talked about this earlier, is far better than not doing anything because you're just unsure, because you've taken in so much information that now you're confused.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I think there are a lot of ways it could be done, as long as you have a way. Right. And that way works for you, and you're really comfortable and confident with it. Like, I'm all for it.
Yeah. Commit to it. And then you'll know if it's not working, you'll know it's time to make a change.
Yep.
Like, give it a shot.
Yeah.
Give it a chance.
Do you have any tools or apps or gadgets or resources, like anything that like you can't live without? Things that help you do your thing?
Things that help me do my thing that I can't live without. Pen and paper, to be honest. I know that you've got your pen and paper there. I like to put the technology down, really. I'm a note taker, because to me, when I'm writing things down, that's when it solidifies. I can be typing and multitasking. And the apps, I'm not necessarily consistent with them. So when it comes to devices like that, I'm more of a pen to paper, because I think that's the way that it actually gets in here from a memory standpoint. So that's what I like to do. And, I do have, a few podcasts that I have on, go to. So it's a quick little, if I'm not feeling my best, I could press play on this. It's, or a YouTube video that I have in my library. It's like, 5-10 minutes that just resets me. I think those are really important. I'm a big believer in resets. I don't want to, if I have a bad moment, I don't want it to just stay with me all day long. And then I just waste the day away. And then I'm like, tomorrow is a new day. I don't want to, let's try again on Monday. I'm not a big believer in that. So I like to have little resets. I have a theme song that I have right on my phone. I have a specific clip that I can always find on YouTube, and I can rehearse it in my head. So if I can't get on a computer, I know the video. And those are really big resets that in, 5-10 minutes, maybe even less, because my theme song, all I need is 10 minutes, 10 seconds of the song, to help me quickly recover, be resilient, and move on. So to me, if you think about, any types of tools, my reset tools are pretty significant for me.
I think that's awesome. Okay. How does somebody go about, how do I choose my own set of reset tools?
Mm-hmm. Well, here's a great way to do that. Going back to those 3 strengths that you have. So again, bringing it back to the fundamental strengths, mine being bright, full heart, strength finder. Well, when it comes, and I'm just going to look to see what can bring me back my brightness. And what brings me back my brightness is outside. So I know for me, get outside, get in nature, even if it's just sticking my head out. And if I can't do that, I look on my phone, and my first picture when I open my phone is the sunset. And that was when I was on the boat with my father, brings back a great memory. And if I open my phone up to my, oh, sorry, now it's on Do Not Disturb. It's not going to like me to get in here. But if I open up to like my homepage, there's a sunflower of a hike that I was on. So I connect with nature immediately, brings me back my brightness. When it comes to full heart, getting back, I have a video of my nephew, and it just makes me giggle every single time. So I play that easily. I also play my theme song, which I'm going to embarrass myself, but it's from the movie Flashdance, What a Feeling. Their words are, find your passion, make it happen, dance through life. 10 seconds of that song brings me back to heart. And when it comes to Strength Finder, I get down and I start doing push-ups, or I'll do something physical to make me feel stronger, which then makes me start to think about strengths. And those are my typical reset tools. For example, that brings me back to my fundamental strengths, and away I go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the resets are just simple cues. The magic is really like getting settled on what the strengths are, because the cues they could come from anywhere, right?
Get your fundamental strengths, pick the 3 things that characterize you when you're at your best, and then come up with simple tools. I mean, this is simple, and they're all within my control and within my belief, and they take moments, not even a minute, moments. And then it's a great reset to get me back in action.
Yeah, I love that. That's awesome. I'm going to use that too. Okay.
Great.
I've got a list. Haley, this has been fantastic. I had very high expectations, and it's been even better than that.
Oh, good. Well, I appreciate your high expectations. I like that. Thank you. Well, anytime. I'm here anytime, so we can talk about lots of things.
Thank you so much for listening. If you found the show valuable, you can say thanks and show your support simply by taking a quick second to like, share, and comment on the show. You can also find more information about each of my guests, all of the resources from the show, and myself at nickberry.info/TBOJ.